Hi, welcome to Come Study with me, Elder Brock. Today, we will be looking at 1 Samuel 23 and 24. David is already anointed, but he is not yet on the throne. That is what makes this part of his life so heavy. He has the promise of God, but not the fulfillment yet. He has the calling, but not the crown. He has the future, but for now he is still hunted, still pushed into caves and wilderness places, still living as a man with no safe place to stand. And that is where these chapters speak with real power. Because this is the part of the story where a man learns whether he will become great by force or whether he will wait for God. The chapter opens with trouble in Keilah. The Philistines are fighting against the city and robbing the threshing floors. The enemy is not only attacking people. They are attacking survival. They are striking at food, at labor, at what a town needs to live. And David hears about it. That matters. Because David himself is in danger. Saul is already trying to kill him. David is already carrying the burden of his own crisis. And yet when he hears that others are suffering, he does not turn inward and say, I have enough problems of my own. He asks the Lord, Shall I go? Shall I fight these Philistines? The Lord tells him to go. But David's men are afraid, and their fear makes sense. They are already in danger in Judah. If they move openly against the Philistines, they could be crushed from more than one side. So David asks the Lord again. And the Lord answers again. Arise, go down to Keilah. I will deliver the Philistines into thine hand. So David goes. He fights. He saves the city. He wins a real deliverance for people who could not save themselves. That is one of the beautiful things about David in these chapters. Even while he is suffering, he is still being used. Even while he is running, he is still serving. Even while he is not yet king, he is already acting like one. And there is something deeply Christ-like in that pattern. The Lord's servants are often still wounded while they are helping others. After the rescue, Saul hears that David is in Keilah. And Saul says something chilling. He thinks God has delivered David into his hand because David has entered a town with gates and bars. Saul is spiritually blind enough to read his own hatred as providence. That is a dangerous thing. When a man is set on evil, he can start dressing his will in religious language. He can start calling his obsession guidance. He can start calling his anger righteousness. So David asks the Lord again, Will Saul come down? The Lord says yes. Then David asks the harder question, Will the men of Keilah deliver me up into his hand? And the answer is yes again. That hurts. David had just saved them. He had just risked himself for them. He had just fought for their lives. And yet if pressure comes, they will hand him over. That is one of the bitter lessons of mortality. Doing good does not guarantee gratitude. Delivering others does not mean they will stand with you later. Sometimes the very people you bless are too afraid to protect you when it costs them something. So David leaves. He and his men, about 600 now, depart out of Keilah and go wherever they can go. No settled home. No security. Just movement. Just wilderness. Just the next place to survive. And Saul, hearing David is gone, stops that march for the moment. Then the story moves into the wilderness strongholds, into the woods, into the mountains of Ziph. And the scripture says something powerful. Saul sought him every day, but God delivered him not into his hand. every day. That means this was not one burst of danger. This was not one bad night. This was pressure that stayed, fear that stayed, uncertainty that stayed. And yet, over all of it stands that one line: God delivered him not. David was not forgotten. He was not unprotected. He was not outside the reach of heaven, even in the wilderness. And then comes one of the tender moments in all the story. Jonathan, Saul's son, rises and goes to David in the wood. And he strengthens his hand in God. That is a holy line. He does not come with an army. He does not solve the whole political crisis. He does not remove Saul from the throne. But he strengthens David's hand in God. Sometimes the most sacred thing one soul can do for another is not to fix everything. It is to strengthen faith. It is to remind a weary servant that the Lord still sees, still speaks, still remembers. Jonathan tells David not to fear. He says Saul will not find him. He says David will be king. He says, in effect, the promise still stands. And the two of them make covenant before the Lord. Then Jonathan goes home, and David stays in the wilderness. That too is real life. There are moments when God sends strength, and then the friend leaves, and the trial remains. The encouragement is real, but so is the wilderness. Not long after that, the Ziphites go to Saul and betray David's location. Again, the pattern repeats. David is pursued. Saul comes down with his men. The mountains close in. For a moment, it looks as though David is trapped. Saul is on one side of the mountain, David on the other, and the danger is tightening. It feels like the end. Then suddenly a messenger comes to Saul with urgent news. The Philistines have invaded the land. Saul has to turn back, and David escapes. The place is called Sela-Hammelikoth, the Rock of Divisions. That name fits, because in one moment, death was approaching. In one moment, the path was closing. In one moment, David was almost swallowed. And then the Lord divided the situation and made a way. Not by what David planned, not by what David controlled, but by providence. That is often how the Lord preserves his people. Not always by removing the wilderness, but by interrupting the hand that was closing in. Then David goes to dwell in the strongholds of En-Gedi. And there the story turns from fear to temptation. Saul takes 3,000 chosen men and goes to seek David. 3,000. That number tells you the imbalance. Saul is the king with organized force. David is still the hunted servant of the Lord. And Saul enters a cave. He does not know David and his men are there, farther inside in the darkness. And David's men whisper what many men would have wanted to hear. This is the day. This is your chance. Your enemy is in your hand. Take the throne. End the hunt. Strike once, and the whole problem is over. That is the temptation. Not just to survive, but to seize by fleshly wisdom what God had promised to give in his own time. David creeps forward. He cuts off the skirt of Saul's robe. But immediately his heart smites him. Even that troubles his conscience. And David says he will not stretch forth his hand against the Lord's anointed. That is one of the great moments in David's life. Because this chapter is not mainly showing that David had the chance to kill Saul. It is showing that David had the chance to become Saul. He could have taken the kingdom through blood. He could have justified it. He could have said the promise was his anyway. He could have called it necessity. But he refuses. Why? Because David understands something that many people never learn. A God-given future must not be gained by ungodly means. If the Lord has truly chosen you, then you do not need to sin in order to secure what God has already promised. David restrains his men. Saul leaves the cave alive. Then David follows and cries after him. He bows himself. He shows honor even to the man who has shown him none. And then he speaks. Why do you listen to those who say, I seek your hurt? Today the Lord delivered you into my hand in the cave, and I spared you. See this piece of your robe. I could have killed you, but I did not. There is neither evil nor transgression in my hand. Then David uses language full of humility. After whom does the king of Israel come out? After a dead dog. After a flea. What a picture. Saul is spending royal strength hunting a fugitive who is no threat to him in the way Saul imagines. And then David places judgment where it belongs. The Lord judge between me and thee. That is the center of the chapter. David will not take vengeance into his own hand. He will not deny wrong. He will not pretend evil is good. But neither will he step into God's place. He puts the matter in the Lord's hands. And Saul weeps. For a moment, the hardness breaks. He says, Thou art more righteous than I. He confesses that David has rewarded him good, while he has rewarded David evil. And then Saul says what he has long feared and what he now knows. I know well that thou shalt surely be king. There it is. The hunted man in the cave is the coming king of Israel. But he will be king not only because he was chosen. He will be king because, in this moment, he proved that he could wait for God. Saul asks David to swear that he will not cut off his seed after him. David swears. Saul goes home. David returns to the hold. And that ending matters. There is no full reconciliation yet. No final peace yet. No throne yet. The story does not end with easy resolution. It ends with David still waiting, still hidden, still trusting, still not forcing what only God can rightly establish. And that is where the chapter speaks to us. Many people want the promise of God, but not the waiting room of God. They want the crown, but not the cave. They want the calling, but not the wilderness. They want vindication, but not the surrender of vengeance. They want God's will, but they want to reach it through their own impatience. But David teaches us a holier way. Rescue others while you are still hurting. Ask the Lord again when fear rises. Keep moving when gratitude fails. Receive strength when God sends a Jonathan. Trust the Lord when betrayal comes. And when the moment arrives where flesh says, take it now, do it your way, end it by your own hand, fear God more than your own urgency. Because the kingdom belongs to the Lord. And what God gives in righteousness must never be seized in sin. In the end, David points us beyond himself. Because there is a greater king than David. Jesus Christ was also rejected. He was also hunted. He was also betrayed. He also refused to answer violence with sinful violence. He entrusted himself to the Father. And because he did, he was exalted in perfect righteousness. So when you are in a wilderness season, do not believe that hidden means forgotten. When you are surrounded, Do not believe that pressure means abandonment. When you are tempted to grasp what God has not yet given, do not believe impatience is strength. The Lord knows where His servants are. He knows how to preserve them. He knows how to divide the mountain. He knows how to keep a promise alive in a cave. And He knows how to bring His people to the throne He has appointed, without them having to wound their souls on the way there.